There is something almost embarrassing, almost quietly ironic, about the truth that emerges when the history of infantry rifles is examined without sentiment or national pride, because the greatest military-industrial machine Europe produced in the early 20th century, the same civilization that built autobahns, zeppelins, precision optics, and rockets that would later reach the edge of space, never managed to create a service rifle that outlived a design conceived by the son of a Scottish watchmaker during the reign of Queen Victoria, a man named James Paris Lee, who died in 1904 without ever seeing his creation achieve the strange kind of immortality that only war, feared by poachers in Kenyan game reserves, trusted by Canadian rangers above the Arctic Circle, while no equivalent can be said for the German service rifles. Because no soldier anywhere is cleaning a Carabiner 98K for patrol tomorrow morning, no conscript is relying on a Gur 98 to survive the night, since every German service rifle from both world wars has passed entirely into history, into collections, reenactments, and hunting cabins, beautifully made museum pieces to be admired rather than used, while the Lee-Enfield remains stubbornly alive as a working tool, and this reality demands explanation not in terms of romance but in engineering philosophy, supply chains, colonial legacies, and the brutal economics of industrial warfare, because between 1895 and the present day, approximately 17 million Lee-Enfields were produced across the British Empire and Commonwealth in dozens of variants, officially serving with the armed forces of 46 nations and fighting in the Boer War, the First World War, the Second World War, Korea, both Indo-Pakistani wars, the Malayan emergency, the Mau Mau uprising, the Suez crisis, and countless smaller conflicts, while remaining in reserve or auxiliary service in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Canada even into the 21st century, whereas Germany produced roughly 14 million Mauser pattern military rifles between 1898 and 1945. Exceptional weapons by any standard, studied admiringly by American ordnance officers and forming the basis of nearly every successful sporting bolt-action design of the 20th century, yet entirely extinct as military arms by the mid-1950s. And the reason for this divergence begins in South Africa at the turn of the century, where the British Empire discovered to its humiliation that its soldiers were being killed in alarming numbers by Dutch farmers armed with German rifles, men with no formal military education who nevertheless understood that modern warfare had arrived while London still polished cavalry sabers, because the Boer War, expected to last mere months, dragged on for years and cost tens of thousands of British casualties as Boer commandos using Mauser Model 1895 rifles demonstrated that accurate, rapid fire from modern repeating rifles could shatter infantry trained in Napoleonic doctrine, as seen at battles like Magersfontein in December 1899, where concealed riflemen inflicted devastating losses in minutes, revealing that the problem was not British courage but British equipment, since frontline troops still carried the Lee-Metford, a transitional rifle whose black powder rifling wore out rapidly under cordite ammunition, sometimes losing accuracy after only a few thousand rounds, while Boer rifles remained effective out to 600 yards and beyond, granting irregular farmers a technological edge that the Empire could not tolerate. And the response was swift, with the adoption of the short-magazine Lee-Enfield Mark I in 1904, a rifle that retained Lee's rear-locking bolt and detachable 10-round magazine, while replacing Metford rifling with Enfield pattern grooves capable of handling cordite, shortening the barrel to create a single standardized weapon for infantry, cavalry, and artillery crews alike, an act of logistical revolution that simplified training, ammunition supply, and spare parts, because British planners understood something German doctrine would repeatedly underestimate. In modern war, the rifle that reaches the soldier and can be kept running matters more than the rifle that wins accuracy competitions, and through continuous soldier-driven refinement, the SMLE matured into the Mark III by 1907, emphasizing reliability and manufacturability, so that by 1914 Britain possessed not only hundreds of thousands of Lee-Enfields but an army trained to exploit them through a doctrine known as the Mad Minute, a musketry standard requiring 15 aimed hits at 300 yards in 60 seconds, a minimum that skilled soldiers often doubled. And when the British Expeditionary Force met advancing German armies at Mons in August 1914, German officers, expecting slow continental rifle fire, instead encountered a volume of accurate shooting so intense that they mistook it for massed machine guns, because the SMLE's smooth 60-degree bolt throw, 10-round magazine, and shoulder-mounted cycling allowed trained infantry to deliver sustained rapid fire unmatched by armies whose doctrine emphasized bayonet spirit over marksmanship. And although trench warfare later reduced the relative importance of rifle speed, the Lee-Enfield proved forgiving in mud, blood, and neglect, its generous tolerances outperforming the more precisely fitted Mausers, so that by 1918 many of the rifles firing billions of rounds were essentially the same weapons issued in 1914, while Germany, recognizing deficiencies, began seeking replacements even before the armistice, driven by an engineering culture that equated mechanical perfection with battlefield success, a philosophy that produced magnificent tanks, aircraft, and rockets but faltered when applied to infantry arms, because while the Mauser 98's controlled feed bolt, front locking lugs, and factory accuracy were objectively superior, these advantages mattered less in combat than Germans believed, as the 90-degree bolt lift slowed cycling, the 5-round internal magazine limited sustained fire, and the long overall length proved unwieldy in modern fighting, leading eventually to the Carabiner 98K, a shortened but fundamentally unchanged design that entered the Second World War already conceptually obsolete, prompting Germany to pursue a chaotic series of replacement programs, from the failed G41 rifles to the limited G43, the brilliant but rare FG42, and the revolutionary yet too late STG44, while the Kar 98K remained the standard arm, unchanged in essence from an 1898 concept, in stark contrast to Britain, which introduced the No. 4 Lee-Enfield during the war not as a technological leap, but as a simplified, faster-to-produce evolution of an already adequate design, preserving caliber, magazine capacity, and manual of arms so that soldiers across generations could use it instinctively, an approach rooted in the understanding that logistics win industrial wars. A truth dramatically demonstrated after Dunkirk when Britain lost most of its equipment yet rapidly rearmed because Lee-Enfield production was distributed across Britain, Canada, Australia, and India, beyond the reach of German bombers, while German rifle production remained concentrated in factories increasingly devastated by Allied bombing, leading to shortages so severe that by 1944 Germany reissued Great War rifles from storage, even as Britain produced hundreds of thousands of Lee-Enfields annually and supplied resistance movements across Europe, treating rifles as expendable tools rather than treasured objects. And when the war ended, German military rifles vanished almost completely as captured Mausers were scrapped, factories dismantled, and the German state forbidden from rearmament, leaving the Mauser lineage alive only in sporting arms, whereas the Lee-Enfield entered a new phase of life as former colonies inherited not only the rifles but the means to produce them, with India continuing manufacture at Ishapur, later rechambering the design for 7.62 NATO and using it in multiple post-independence wars, Pakistan maintaining production for frontier and reserve forces, Australia and New Zealand retaining stocks into the late 1950s, and Canada's Rangers never abandoning the rifle at all because nothing else matched its reliability in extreme cold, a reality so persistent that even modern replacement programs struggle to equal it, while in Afghanistan, Africa, and South Asia Lee-Enfields continued to circulate through inheritance, capture, and the Khyber Pass arms trade, where local gunsmiths still hand-build functional copies for the cost of a modest meal, supported by the uninterrupted production of .303 British ammunition across continents, creating the extraordinary situation in which a Victorian-era imperial weapon arms modern insurgents and police forces alike, serves hunters and conservationists, and remains operational wherever simplicity, reliability, and cost outweigh technological sophistication. While no nation on earth issues a Mauser-pattern military rifle today, making the disparity impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Because it rests on three compounding factors: distributed manufacturing that ensured continuity despite catastrophe, a design philosophy that favored real-world performance over theoretical excellence, and ammunition standardization that sustained logistical viability for over a century, reinforcing a cycle in which continued service justified continued production and vice versa. So that by every meaningful metric the Lee-Enfield outlasted not only its German contemporaries but the empire that created it and the industrial age that shaped it, a reality captured in photographs of modern soldiers still carrying rifles descended directly from James Paris Lee's design, not out of nostalgia but necessity, because in environments where modern materials fail, a simple steel and wood mechanism endures, and so the final accounting is stark and unavoidable. Germany built masterpieces that became antiques. Britain built tools that refused to die. And somewhere tonight, in mountains that have seen empires rise and fall for millennia, someone is cleaning a Lee-Enfield passed down through generations, trusting a mechanism that has never yet failed, while the German rifles rest silently behind glass, admired, perfected, and finished, all of them dead, as the Lee-Enfield goes on.